My wife told my dad, "Your medicine isn't my problem." Then her family threatened me to put all property in her name. I filed for divorce instead, and she cried when she realized it was all under my parents' names. When I got married, I was 34, and like anyone walking into marriage, I believed I had found a true partner. Someone who wanted to build a life with me, share burdens, and grow together. The first few months were smooth enough. We had our share of minor disagreements, but nothing unusual for newlyweds. I thought we were simply adjusting to each other's ways. But slowly, things started to shift. It wasn't about love, time together, or the usual relationship struggles. Everything began revolving around money and property. Almost every day, my wife would bring up the same subject. "You should transfer the property into my name. You're always busy. You don't have time to handle these things responsibly." At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just anxious about security. But the persistence was relentless. It didn't matter if we were having dinner, watching TV, or even visiting my parents. She would find a way to slip it into the conversation. "You're careless. You'll mismanage it. It's safer with me," she'd say, like a rehearsed line she had decided to live by. The moment that really unsettled me was when she stopped keeping it just between us. One evening at my parents' house, while we were having tea, she looked directly at my father and said, "You should transfer everything into my name. He's too busy with work and not careful enough. I'll handle it better." My dad set his cup down and gave her a calm but firm look. "That won't be happening," he replied. There wasn't anger in his tone, just clarity. He had worked hard his entire life to build what little he had, and I knew how much weight that refusal carried. After that, I could sense the shift in her energy. Her persistence turned sharper, less about concern and more about insistence. She began repeating the demand daily, almost like it was her right, like I owed her something. I tried to reason with her, telling her that I wasn't going to sign over what belonged to my family. But she didn't take it as a boundary. She treated it as a challenge. I remember lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how something so pure in the beginning had turned into this constant battle over property. I kept telling myself maybe she just needed reassurance, that maybe she was afraid of being financially vulnerable. But deep down, I couldn't shake the thought that there was something else behind it, something that wasn't about love at all. The pressure became a part of our everyday life. Phone calls from her side of the family would often circle back to the same topic. Little comments dropped in conversations, as if they were planting seeds, hoping they'd grow into pressure on me. Even my dad began noticing, telling me quietly one day, "Son, this isn't normal. Be careful." I wanted to believe marriage was about patience and compromise, but compromise has limits. When it becomes one-sided, it's no longer compromise, it's surrender. And I could feel myself slowly being pushed toward that line, where my marriage wasn't about us anymore, but about demands and control. I didn't act immediately. Maybe I should have. But at that point, I was still trying to convince myself this was just a phase. That somehow, if I stood firm, she'd let it go. I didn't realize then that this was just the beginning, that the real storm hadn't even started yet. After my father refused to transfer the property, my wife's attitude changed in a way that was hard to ignore. It wasn't subtle anymore. Her frustration turned into open hostility, directed not only at me, but especially at my parents. At family gatherings, she'd sit with a cold expression, barely acknowledging anyone. If my mom tried to make conversation, she would give short, dismissive replies or roll her eyes. And if money came up in even the most casual way, she'd seize the moment to throw in an insult. "This family doesn't know how to manage anything. No wonder you're always struggling," she once said in front of everyone. It stung, not because my parents didn't have much, but because of the complete lack of respect. My parents had lived honest, hard-working lives. We weren't wealthy, but we never lacked what truly mattered. Hearing her dismiss them as poor and beneath her status wasn't just disrespect, it was cruel. At first, I tried to step in and smooth things over. I told myself, maybe she doesn't realize how harsh she sounds. But as time went on, I realized she knew exactly what she was saying. In fact, she seemed to enjoy belittling them, as if by cutting them down, she could push me closer to her demands. The breaking point for me came one evening when my father wasn't feeling well. He's older and has health issues that require daily medication. That night, he asked my wife if she could pass him his medicine, which was on the shelf near her. It was such a simple request, one anyone with basic decency would fulfill without a second thought. She didn't move. She just looked at him and said flatly, "Your medicine is not my problem. Take it yourself." The room went silent. My dad gave a weak smile and got up slowly to fetch it himself. He didn't argue, didn't complain, but I could see the hurt written all over his face. That moment hit me harder than anything before. It wasn't just about property anymore. It was about humanity. The woman I had promised to build a life with couldn't even show the smallest act of kindness to my father when he needed it. Something inside me cracked that night. Later, when I confronted her about it, she brushed it off. "He can take care of himself," she said coldly. "Why should I be responsible for your family? They're not my problem. Not her problem." Those words echoed in my head for days. Marriage is supposed to be about supporting each other and, by extension, respecting each other's families. But for her, my family wasn't just unimportant, they were obstacles. From that point on, it felt like she stopped even pretending. The insults became daily, the distance from my family grew wider, and the pressure to transfer property only intensified. If I didn't engage in the conversation, she would accuse me of being weak or controlled by my parents. I kept wondering, was this really the person I married? Or had I been blind from the beginning? It's a painful thing to admit, but I started to realize that maybe I had fallen in love with an idea, not the reality of who she was. And yet, despite everything, I still hadn't made a decision. I was clinging to the hope that maybe she would change, that maybe she just needed time to adjust. But looking back now, I see that moment with my father's medicine as the true turning point. It was the moment I stopped seeing her as just difficult and started recognizing the deeper truth. This wasn't love anymore. By this point, things between my wife and my family were at a breaking point. The atmosphere at home was always tense, like a storm hanging overhead. I was exhausted from the daily arguments and the constant disrespect toward my parents. But what really confirmed everything for me was the day her mother decided to get involved. I still remember the call vividly. I had just finished dinner when my phone rang, and it was her mother. I thought maybe she was calling to check in, or at least to try and calm the situation. Instead, the moment I picked up, she started speaking in a raised, almost commanding tone. She didn't ask how I was doing. She didn't try to have a conversation. Her first words were, "Why is my daughter unhappy with you?" I tried to stay calm, telling her that we were going through normal marital struggles and that I was doing my best to work through them. But she cut me off mid-sentence. Her voice grew louder, sharper. "You put the property in her name, or you will face many problems. Do you understand?" There it was, no attempt at compromise, no attempt at understanding. Just a threat, direct and unapologetic. I sat there holding the phone, stunned at the audacity. A part of me had hoped that maybe the family pressure was something my wife had exaggerated, but now I realized it wasn't just her. It was her entire family pushing this narrative. They weren't looking at me as a partner, a son-in-law, or even as a human being. I was simply a means to an end. After I hung up, I felt an odd sense of clarity. The pieces finally fit together. All the arguments, the insults, the coldness toward my parents. It wasn't just immaturity or a rough patch. It was about control. It was about greed. That night, I confronted my wife. I told her about the phone call, and instead of being surprised or concerned, she doubled down. "Well, maybe if you respected my family, they wouldn't have to step in," she said. That statement hit me like a brick. Respected her family? What about the respect they had shown mine? What about the way she dismissed my father when he asked for help with his medicine? Respect wasn't what they wanted. They wanted ownership. They wanted power. In that moment, something inside me shifted. I stopped feeling guilty. I stopped making excuses for her behavior. I realized this marriage wasn't built on love or partnership or any of the values I believed in. It was built on manipulation and entitlement. I spent the next few days in deep thought. I replayed every moment of the past year, every red flag I had brushed aside, every insult I had told myself wasn't that serious. The truth was clear. If I stayed, it would only get worse. Today it was property. Tomorrow, who knew what else? Marriage should make you feel stronger, like you have someone by your side no matter what. But instead, I felt drained, disrespected, and cornered. And for the first time, I stopped asking myself if she would ever change. Instead, I asked myself if I was willing to live the rest of my life like this. The answer came quickly, no. That was the night I made the decision to leave. Once I made up my mind, there was no turning back. I wasn't going to let myself or my parents live under constant pressure, disrespect, and threats. Filing for divorce wasn't an impulsive decision. It was the only choice left. When I finally told her, she didn't believe me at first. She laughed nervously and said, "You're just angry. You'll get over it." But when she saw the paperwork in my hand a few days later, her entire demeanor changed. Panic set in. She cried, begged, and clung to me, promising that everything would be different if I just gave her one more chance. "I'll stop asking about the property. I'll be better. I'll respect your family," she said through tears. But the problem wasn't just the property. It was everything that came with it. The manipulation, the disregard for my parents, the constant sense that I was being treated as a tool rather than a partner. I told her calmly, "It's too late. You had more than enough chances." When she realized begging wasn't working, she switched tactics. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Fine. If you want a divorce, I'll take half your property." I almost laughed at the irony. She didn't even realize she had no leverage. Everything I had, everything she wanted, was in my parents' names. Legally, there was nothing she could touch. I explained this to her, and the look on her face was something I'll never forget. It wasn't sadness about losing me. It was devastation about losing the one thing she had been chasing all along. Her tears returned, but this time they felt hollow. She begged again, softer now, desperate. "Please don't leave me. I'll change. I'll do anything." But the more she spoke, the clearer it became that she wasn't sorry for the way she treated me or my family. She was sorry her plan hadn't worked. Then came the family pressure. Her parents and relatives began calling, insisting I should forgive her. "She's a good person. She just made mistakes. Every marriage has problems," they said. Some even tried guilt-tripping me, saying divorce would ruin her reputation. But by then, I had grown numb to their words. I knew what they really wanted. It wasn't about saving the marriage. It was about keeping the possibility of control alive. I refused to back down. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of clarity, a sense of strength. I went through with the divorce, finalized it, and cut off all contact with her and her family. The day it was over, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. I didn't feel anger or revenge or even satisfaction. I just felt free. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if there were signs I should have seen earlier, things I overlooked because I wanted to believe love was enough. Maybe I was too hopeful, too trusting. But in the end, I'm glad I didn't let myself or my parents become victims of that manipulation. Now, I live without the constant weight of demands and threats. My relationship with my parents is stronger than ever, and I know I made the right decision. So here I am, sharing my story with strangers on the internet, not because I want pity, but because I want to hear what others think. Did I do the right thing walking away when I did? Or should I have tried harder to save something that was already broken? I appreciate you watching till the end. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more content.